We're here at the Tantra Foundation with Professor Madhu Khanna, who is the person who is launching the Tantra Foundation and is also a scholar from Oxford, as well as the person who ran the Center for Religious Studies at Jamia. And in September 2021, we should have the Tantra Foundation launched, but
library.
Library launched. The foundation's already launched. The library will be launched in September 21. But in the meantime, since we're here, I'm going to request Professor Khanna to just take us through the Tantra Foundation. Why does she feel the need for the Tantra Foundation for starters?
Well, thank you for being here, Ritika. It's so nice to see a young person like you asking these questions, which are extremely relevant in this century. Well, after my PhD at Oxford, which was many years ago, maybe you were not born then, it was in the late 80s, when I returned to India, I realized that there is no platform, no academic institution where one could study, research and explore tantric studies in the various aspects of tantric studies. And when I went deeper into what was being offered socially and culturally in India, I realized that, as a matter of fact, these studies, Hindu studies, Indic studies, religious studies, whatever label you give them, they are outside the academia. I mean, one could pursue a degree in Sanskrit, but you would be learning about Kavya and literature. You may not even touch anything on Indian philosophy, or even if or one may touch that very vaguely. One wouldn't be studying tantras anyway. So it was actually in Oxford I decided, when I was still a student, I said, when I return to India, I must have a small foundation. And I came back and I registered my foundation. And then so basically, you see, I found that there were really no platforms where one could pursue the study of religion. The study of Tantra, of course, was very far away. It was, it was not even recognized as a proper subject. And I must say that I have to really thank Oxford University for introducing courses. There are some brilliant scholars there who started research into tantras, and therefore I was able to do my PhD there. I mean, to think that here is this great tradition, medieval tradition, with some outstanding names of philosophers who contributed so much to tantric studies, that those studies cannot be pursued in India. It was such a big joke. And it has been the greatest tragedy for India not to have taken its civilizational resources in terms of literature, in terms of philosophies, in terms of its art, its archaeology, its languages seriously. So it was with these ideas, since I found the gap, and the gap was larger and larger as I grew up, that I decided that we must have a small foundation, that these like-minded people would come together and explore this great tradition together. It was around the same time that I discovered that apart from the academic study of Tantra, there's a very big collection of Tantra art belonging to Dr. Ajit Mukherjee, which traveled to the West. It was shown in London in 1972. Fortunately for me, I'd gone on my first scholarship there. So I viewed that exhibition at the Hayward Gallery, and I was shocked to see the most remarkable images of tantric images of gods and goddesses and abstract representations, which I'd never seen in Indian art before. And somehow, if the annotations and labels were not there, I would have thought that many of the works that were presented were in fact done by modern artists, because it was so abstract and so beautifully constructed. And I think I resonated with that form of expression. I also resonated with the philosophy that underlies these traditions. And I also resonated with the fact that an art should be linked with personal evolution, not just, it should not simply be a critique of society. You know, the art is meant for transcendence, human transcendence of some kind, and moving beyond the limitations with which we live. And I think Tantra art has that, particularly when you look at the yogic images, you know, scrolls which are 30 feet, which mirror the micro and macrocosmos, that this is what human beings are. Human beings are just not materialistic conglomeration of physical structures, but they're much, much more. There's a spirit, there's a mind, there's a kind of an understanding of a larger cosmos beyond us. So all these aspects made me, of course, pursue this further. But I must say that it's been a journey of a lone woman, because not many people take it seriously. The work of Tantra Foundation went on. We had our first annual sort of distinguished lecture by no less authority than Professor Alexis Anderson, who's today one of the greatest scholars of Shaivism, Kashmir Shaivism. He gave our first inaugural lecture, and I must say the room was jam-packed. It was an IIC, then we had another one, and then we had, very recently we gave another one. So I think it's catching up, but not to the extent that it should. So I, after my, I decided, because I've built a huge library, not a very big library, but it's definitely a research library, because I've been teaching Hindu studies and Indic studies at Jamia Millia Islamia and Center for Comparative Religion. And of course, I realized that even our libraries were very inefficient and not well stocked with the kind of teaching that was going on. Of course, we built a departmental library, but fortunately I was traveling abroad quite often and I have a love for books. So I gathered together all the major works that are necessary to at least to introduce you to Indic studies, whether it's history, whether it's religious history of cultures, or whether it's art, or it's philosophy, or modern studies. There are many, many modern studies. And since my work has been on the cult of Tripur Sundari, I worked on the earliest phase of this tradition, which evolved in Kashmir, which was around the late 11th and 12th centuries. And I had to read manuscript sources, I had to translate manuscripts and Sanskrit texts, because there was nothing in English. There were just two very, small books on Sri Chakra. My study was focused on goddess Tripur Sundari, but her worship in the Sri Yantra, the symbolism of the Sri Yantra, and the ritual dynamics of the Sri Yantra, and of course the early history, because that's the earliest phase of the tradition of Tripur Sundari that we have known so far. So since I worked for that took me into Shaktism, study of Shaktism. Shakta traditions in India who worship the goddess. Now, there has been a lot of work on the goddess, of course, pre-10th century, who are well known and widely worshipped, but there has not been enough research on tantric goddesses. Kali has been, of course, explored in all her dimensions, but nevertheless, so I have worked extensively on the cult of Dashamahavidyas as well, because Tripur Sundari forms a very important aspect of it. And it is my conviction, that if you're going to teach religion, it should get linked with contemporary concerns of some kind. And I introduced the course of gender and religion, the first of its kind, in Jamia Millia Islamia. It went on very well. And then I also introduced a course on religion and ecology, because I had been part of a group of international scholars from Yale University and others, who have been exploring this, and now they have formed a forum for religion and ecology in Yale University, which is extremely active And over the years, I've seen how it is developed. You can pursue it as an academic course in the West. And so that I introduced. And I also introduced a thematic survey of art in various religions, so that one must understand what are the basic aspects through which we frame our understanding of tribal religions, of religions coming from other faiths like Islam, Buddhism, Jainism, and of course Hinduism, because there's been a massive disconnect.
So I'm going to come to two questions, because we've discussed it to this extent, but can you just explain what is Tantra? It's a huge question, but and the second question, how does feminism fit into Tantra?
Because Tantra is, you see, there are certain features of Tantra which are very radical, and one of them is it gives a lot of prominence to women. And I have a huge article on that if you ever want to read, because they consider women to be the iconic counterpart of the divine feminine. They don't consider menstruation to be impure, which is a massive leap from how menstruation was considered in all cultures of the world as linked with guilt and sin. And they gave for tantrics, women could play very powerful roles in society, spiritual roles. So they could become gurus, they could initiate men and women, and indeed there are many women who have done that. So all these features, the way their notion of the body and senses is very different from the way I would say traditional orthodox Brahmanical views frame the woman. So in that sense, Tantra is of course very unique.
But you still count it as part of Hinduism?
Of course.
Okay.
You see, firstly, there is no such thing as Hinduism. There are Hindus, and each one has a different way of looking at Hindu thought. Similarly, there are Tantras. We can't talk of Tantra in a singular.
Okay.
There's no such. It's not an ism.
Okay.
It's a way of life, and therefore it's a path of I would say self-realization, a path of moksha. But Tantra, of course, gives a lot of emphasis to bhoga also,
which is
worldly pleasures. It does not bifurcate. There is no binary division between bhoga and moksha within Tantra. So in that sense, it's quite unique. So this library is really, it is my baby in one sense. It's a research library, but it does have all the basic books on Hindu studies, on Tantric studies, on Shakta tradition. It has very large collection of Sanskrit sources which are absolutely necessary to go into the study of Tantra. All the foundational texts, very large selection of texts from Kashmir Shaivism, because that is a very important school of thought within Tantra. Also from Bengal, we have a huge section on Bengal as well, Bengal Tantras. In fact, I've just finished putting together an anthology on the Tantras in Bengal and northeastern India. It will be out soon by Springer. And it also has another aspect of the library is that we have almost the entire collection of art books that came out when this big exhibition, Mukherjee collection of Tantra art, traveled to various countries in Europe. And it traveled to about 8 countries. And wherever it went, where it was shown, they brought out a new catalogue. So we have catalogue in German, in Dutch, in French, in different languages, Spanish. So this is, and then we also have the entire archives of Paro Hamilton Mukherjee, from our father's collection, all the archives we are in possession of that. And plus we have a very large selection of gender and religion. We have a very good collection of arts, books on art, particularly which kind of in one sense are linked with Tantra, esoteric subjects like alchemy and astrology, and also goddess traditions of different cultures, which you may not find them in one classic work of Gimbitus, which is of Martha, which is on the language of the goddess. I haven't found it in any library, but it is in our library. Then, of course, we have all the basic works of Hindu studies, and we, as a library, we are very interested in teaching of religions as well as tribal cultures. So we have some foundational books of that. So I think anybody working on religion would need to come here. And we are also adding now a whole series on ancient wisdom and modern science. So it's meant to be a haven for lifelong learners or for scholars. But I think one of our key programs, of course, is going to be on teaching and training in the subjects which are outside the curricula. So we are looking for Western collaborations for that, because in the East there are hardly any people who want to teach these studies, or they don't want to teach it the way we want to teach it, which is slightly more rigorous, not so easygoing. And we also want to build a digitization of archival material, and we have a large selection of visuals as well, running over 50,000. But the question is that we need support, financial support for this. We have had no support, by the way. This is coming out of my little bag and my iWatch Foundation, which is run by my brother, and he's been pretty generous to create this library over here in this premise. It's a very nice green premises, and we are fortunate to have 4 rooms, large rooms, where we,
which
we
I
can
hope you're going to
expand.
walk through.
Yeah. So that's how that's what it is. Yeah.
You are also planning, you said, a series of workshops after the launch. Is that?
Yes, we will be planning. It depends who gives us money. Because we've reached a point where we really need funds to run it. We've established this. We are not asking for infrastructure, which is a huge amount to maintain this. But certainly for running programs and getting the right youngsters to help us, we will need funds. And it depends who promotes us.
Can we just walk through the other sections as well?
Yeah.
It's actually a huge big space. It's
beautiful space. So this is our main office, you can say. And you see these posters, they are from different countries. Wherever the Tantra Art exhibition went, they printed these posters to advertise the exhibition. So you have, for instance, this is from different cultures. You have in Japan, you have in Germany, you have in England, gallery. Yeah, this is Gunter Sachs. This is from Germany, this poster. That is Art Council of Great Britain, that poster. Then Cologne, again in Germany. And then this is in Netherlands. Wherever the exhibition went, Vienna, they created posters and brought out beautiful catalogs. And we have all the catalogs, although they're in different languages. So I guess here we are.
fantastic. And best of luck with it.
Yeah, there has to be a revival, of these studies, and they will be, because the 70s have been very cruel to humanity. At least the a lot of people in the West have recognized the importance of spiritual India and what India has given to the universe, to the world, but Indians have not recognized that. No foreigner comes to India to look at modern buildings or even to come to study in our universities. They really come to dig out civilizational India. And it's in that context that Tantra will find a place.
Thank you.